So I went ahead and did the markings for the two lines. I did it in red. I don't know if you can see. Okay, maybe you'll be able to see it better after I stitch it. So I'm going to reduce my stitch from basting length to just a regular stitch length. I'm going to do 3.5 and go ahead and stitch this down, both rows of stitching. I'm not going to do zigzag because this is it's not an area where I will really need it to stretch. So I am going to just do a straight stitch on this one. Through all the layers, so I'm stitching through that flap that we ironed underneath and basted in place. Okay. Oh, I chose a nice dark fabric. A little hard to see, but I'm not going to blame just the fabric. It's me. I'll go along with this curve here. Okay, I'm going to go one more. Then I'm backstitch that. So I did the first one. Now I'm going to do the second one. It's like a 1/4 of an inch away from the first one. And even on the second row of stitching, you can still feel the layer underneath. So if you don't feel the layer underneath, then you're stitching too far over to the right. Okay. Almost there. You gotta love sewing curves. Okay, it took a second, but I now have my 2 rows of top stitching over the fly. Trim these little pieces of thread, and let's see what do they have for us next. Okay, on the outside, stitch left front extension along short stitching lines at small circles through all thicknesses. So the next step, step number 8, it has us on the outside stitch left front extension along short stitching lines at small circles through all thicknesses. I had to go back to the pattern piece to take a look at that to make sure I understood what it was asking. So here's the pattern piece right here. And so we did these 2 rows of lines already, those 2. These are the short stitching lines at the 3 dots. So it's funny, it's almost like we're just gonna tack it in place, but it's going to be a permanent stitch because it's not a basting stitch. So I went ahead on my pants and I marked those 3. So there's 1, 2, 3, and it's probably like 3/8 of an inch long. It's not even a 1/4 of an inch long. So anyway, go ahead and do those 3 little stitches and then we'll come back for the next. I've gone ahead and laid the pants right side out on my cutting table. So our next step is to pin all 4 pocket pieces to the fronts and backs of these pants. So if you look at the front, both sides of the front pieces, you'll see where you marked a dot, and you'll see where you have a notch. So grab a pocket piece that lines up with that notch when you put the right sides together. So I have one here, so I have my notch right here. I'm going to match it up to the notch on these pants. And then I'm going to go ahead and pin. That's funny. We have the dot on the pant pattern, but I don't recall seeing a dot on the actual paper pattern piece. So thankfully we have the notch to help us line this up. I like to refer to the paper pattern pieces to double check things. So I'm going to grab that pocket. So there's no dot on the paper pattern piece. So the dots on the pants is going to serve another purpose. So for now, we're just making sure to match the notches for the pocket pieces. The dot is going to more than likely come into play when we stitch the pants closed down each side. So just make sure you match your notch, and let's go ahead and pin all 4 pocket pieces right sides together. So that's one. Try to line up your edges. So after we pin these, we are going to sew them at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. All right, so I got the 2 pinned in the front. Go ahead and flip this over so I can pin the 2 for the back. Same thing. Find the piece that's going to match up with the notch. That's the other side. Here we go. Line up your edges. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pin the last one. Go over to the sewing machine and stitch it at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and meet you back over here. Okay, everybody, so today is a new day. I have a wardrobe change. It's been maybe a week or 2. Life happened. So anyway, I'm back so that we can continue on with our sew along of these joggers. And the last step that we left off at was attaching 1 piece of each pocket bag to each side, left and right, front and back of the pant pieces. So now we are going to turn those pants inside out so that we can go ahead and pin the pocket bags facing each other in preparation to stitch those pocket bags shut. All right. So we're going to go ahead and turn these inside out. So that the right sides are together. Like that. I'm going to go ahead and put the back of the pants behind me. So turn this sideways for a better view. So Now we're putting the pocket bags facing each other like that, matching our notches. Remember, we have that notch towards the outer bottom edge of the pocket bag. So we're going to pin around the pocket bag on both sides. And so the next step of step 10, there's another part to step 10, and it says, referring to the pocket bags, stitch, leaving free between large circles. Okay, so that's going to be step 10 right here. Then it says, stitch pocket edges together to side seams. Clip back seam allowances below the pocket. So we're going to go ahead and stitch here. It gets a snip underneath the pocket. I'll show you when I do that. So for now, let's go ahead, pin these, and stitch both of these pockets shut. Okay, so picking up at step number 10 again, and the instructions are to pin the back to the front at the sides with right sides together, matching the notches in the large circles. So basically, we're going to go ahead and pin, starting from the pocket bag on the outer edge, pin or use your clips all the way down the leg, okay? And so when we start stitching, we will start stitching at the very top, at the waist, and it says leaving open at the large circles. So when we traced our markings, we should have had some dots. So here's a dot right here. So I'm going to stitch from the top of the waist. I'm going to stop at this first dot. Then I'm going to go down further to the second dot and start stitching, and then go all the way down the pant leg. Okay, so let's do that now. Carefully backstitch. And then just go on down with my zigzag stitch and stop at that first dot like we just went over. Make sure my seams are lined up. And I'm at 5/8 inch seam allowance. I'm going to go ahead and backstitch at that first dot, even though I'm doing zigzag stitch, just to make sure. Okay, so I've cut my thread, and now I am moving up to the second dot, lining up my edges. And again, this is a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Backstitch carefully so it doesn't jam up in the machine. Sometimes I get that. I'm going to check my seam allowance because my pocket bags are hiding my markings on my sewing machine. So it looks like I'm still lined up okay. a little faster. I don't want to put you guys to sleep. I've reached the bottom of the pant leg. I'm just going to slowly back stitch. Okay, so now I've sewn all the way down this side. And then the next step, it says stitch leaving free between those large circles. We did that. Stitch the pocket edges together to the side seams. So now we're going to start doing the pocket edges. If you have a little trouble with stitching on a curve, just remember you can lift up your presser foot to readjust as you're going along the curve. Something doesn't sound good. Let's take a look. I got a little thread jam. So let me take care of that and I'll be right back. Okay, the surgery is complete. The patient is in recovery, doing well. Okay, so yeah, for whatever reason, the thread just got nested under the plate there. I got my handy tweezers and pulled everything out and made sure there was no dust bunnies in there. So I put my bobbin back in and I practice on a piece of scrap fabric to make sure it's not jamming up anymore. So let's see if she'll behave now that you're watching. Okay, back in business. Okay, so I'm just finishing up, closing up this pocket bag. Stitching it up to that side seam from when we sewed the pant leg straight down. I'm going to go up to that stitch, back stitch just a little bit, and go ahead and cut the thread. Ooh, geez. Okay, so there it is. I managed to make it all the way around in, I don't know, 4 takes, I think that was. All right, and so now that I've stitched the pocket bags closed, it said to clip back seam allowance below the pockets. So basically, I'm just gonna go ahead right here and snip right underneath the pocket bag. Give that a little flexibility. I'm not cutting my seam. I stopped before I hit that side seam, but just to give it a little movement. Okay, so I am going to pause. I'm going to do the other side. Stitch from the waist to the first dot, stop, go down to the second dot, stitch all the way down, come back, stitch the pocket bag shut, and then snip just below the pocket bag for some flexibility, for some movement. And then we'll come back for the next step. Okay, so now we're on step 11. And step 11 is turn pockets toward front along seam lines. Press and then baste upper edge in place. So let me show you guys what that looks like. Hold on. Butterfingers. Okay, so have a look. So here's one of my pockets. I have the front of my pants facing me. I am going to flip this pocket over towards the front. And so they want us to press the pocket towards the front, the seam line. So I turned my iron down a little lower, but just in case, I'm going to use this pressing cloth so that I don't burn this polyester. But I'm using steam. Knock a hole in my wall while I'm at it. No problem. Okay, so I turned that side in. See how it's laying flat now? So now, let's do the same with the other side. Flip that over towards the front and fold that seam in as well. It's going to help the pocket lay flat when you're wearing the pants. Go ahead and put my pressing cloth on top. This is just a piece of lightweight linen. Again, I don't want to burn anything. Okay, then it says to baste across the top. So basically, we're going to do a basting stitch across the top of the pocket bag. So here's our pocket. We're going to do a basting stitch right across the top of both of these. And remember, that's just going to be your largest stitch length. So I think mine goes up to like 6. A lot of machines go up to 4. So go ahead and do that for both of your pockets. Okay, so we just went ahead and did some basting stitches along the top edges of both pockets. And our next step is going to be involving the casing with the elastic or ribbon. If you're using a ribbon, actually we're not going to, well, excuse me, I'm not using a ribbon because I'm not doing a drawstring. But when that step comes, you can go ahead and follow the steps to do the drawstring. But for me, I feel like the elastic, it will hold my pants in place. And for me, that's not the look that I like with the drawstrings. Because if you want to wear a t-shirt out, you have all the lumpiness of the drawstring underneath your t-shirt if you don't want to tuck it in. So I don't really like drawstrings that much. Anyway, so it says for easier insertion of elastic, baste about 3 inches of the seam allowance and place at casing area. So what that means, we know that we're going to do the casing at the waistline. Let me bring you guys here. So here's the waist, right, of the pants, okay? Here's all the seam on the side, right here. So when you form a casing, you're basically gonna fold it over so you can feed that elastic through. Well, what will be a problem is if you have your seam allowance in there loose to have movement, and then when you go to try to feed that elastic through, it's going to hit this. So they're saying to baste this down so that it doesn't present you with a problem when it's time to put your elastic in the casing. So let's go ahead and do that right now. And it's going to be a basting stitch. And so remember, in our last step, we turned our pockets toward the front and pressed it down. So when we do this basting stitch, let's leave those seams leaning towards the front. So let's get in here. I'm still on a basting stitch from when I baste the top of my pockets. And then they said about 3 inches. So for me, I guess that'll take me like to just below the top of the pocket. Right here. So I'm going to start at the top, and I am going to put my basting stitch. Basting stitches are meant to come out, so you can take them out afterwards. But I'm just going to line my presser foot edge along the edge of the side seam and do my basting stitch right there. Move my needle to the center position. Make sure we're still on a basting stitch. 5. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. About 3 inches. So that's going to take me to the top of my pocket bag. No need to back stitch since this is a basting stitch and it's meant to come out later. So that's one side. See how that's going to lay down when I try to feed the casing through. So I'm going to go around to the other side and do the same thing. I think I'm going to get a little closer to the edge. Instead of lining up with the side seam, I'm going to just try to guess work it and get closer to the edge. Make sure I don't have any issues getting my elastic in. Yeah, that's better. See, that should lay down pretty good. Okay, clip some of these loose threads. You know what? Don't forget the one in the back. Our back seam. Go ahead and baste that down as well, because same situation, that can become a pain. All right, so the next step is step number 13, and it says to finish the upper edge of pants with a zigzag stitch or over edge using a serger. Well, it depends on what type of fabric you're using. As far as this step goes, it may not be necessary. Because I'm using this knit polyester, I don't need to finish this edge because it will not unravel. When you're working with knits, they tend to not unravel. If you're working with a woven, then you need to go ahead and zigzag stitch all the way around the waistband along that top edge of your pants to keep it from unraveling. It'll make for a very messy inside of your pants if you don't serge it or zigzag stitch to keep it from unraveling. And if, I mean, that's up to you if you're okay with that. You don't have to do that step. If you're one who likes to keep it neat and tidy inside, then go ahead and finish your edge off. If you have a serger, great. If not, zigzag stitch. Pinking shears, depending on what type of woven fabric that you have, pinking shears could work as well. But again, eventually over time in the wash, it will start to unravel a little bit. So, but again, I'm using a knit, so I get to skip that step. So the next step, moving on to number 14, it says to make casings, turn upper edge of pants to the inside on the fold line and press. Okay, so let's do that now. We're going to go ahead and fold it in. So basically, if you turn your pants the right side out and then fold over on the fold line, we should have our fold line from when we did all of our markings and notches. And then it says to press that. So let's see. After all of this handling of my pants, I don't know if I can still see my fold line. If you can't still see your fold line, by all means go to your paper piece and remark your pants. You can measure to see how far down that fold line is, and then just measure on your pants to redraw the fold line. So let's do that now. Okay, so as I stated through the handling of the garment, my fold line has disappeared. So I went ahead and got the paper pattern pieces back out. And what I'm going to do is measure how far from the top of the pants down does the fold line go. That was a tongue twister, but I think you know what I mean. So for the front of the pants, it's piece 1. And I have my ruler here. So from the top edge, it looks like the fold line is 1 3/4 inches down from the top. That's for the front. Now for the back, I don't know if you remember, we have a bit of a back yoke that we stitched to the back of the pant legs, but same thing. We'll go ahead and measure that, and it's the same. So 1 3/4. Wanted to make sure. So I'm going to move these out of the way. Grab my pants. Now I have my pants upside down because I don't want them sliding off this table while I'm trying to measure out the fold line. So let's see, make sure you guys see some pants. All right, I have my ruler and I have my peach chalk. So 1 3/4 inch. So I am going to go in and mark that, starting from the side seam, 1 3/4, and just start redrawing my line. So I can, I just want to make sure to fold this down in the right place. And it's not going to be, perfectly straight across because there's going to be a slight curve. So have to move your fabric around a little bit to get this right. So. All right, this is the last one that I need to mark on the front of the pants. Okay, so I just put 4 really wide dashes. So I'm going to flip this over to the back of the pants and do the same thing. Mark it on that yoke. One 1 3/4 inch. And again, 4 marks will be enough for me to see where to fold it. Okay, so I have my markings on the front and the back. I'm going to go ahead and turn my pants inside out. Look, guys, these are actually looking like pants now. Okay, looking like very large pants, but we'll see. All right, so now, see my markings? So let me get some pins. So I want to fold on my peach line as best I can because I am hiding it as I fold. And then I'm just going to stick a pin in it to hold it in place while I press it because I don't want, this knit is a little slippery, so I don't want it to move when I'm ironing. So go ahead and just pin it while I'm folding, checking for my line again. If If you're using knit, don't pull on the knit while you're doing this. So we're just making that casing, aka a channel for the elastic to pass through. Here's another line. Fold on that peach line as best as I can. Here's my fourth one in the front. Fold that down, keeping my seams. Also, when you're folding this, please make sure to keep your pocket bag towards the front. Remember, we pressed that down towards the front, so make sure you keep it that way. All right, so the front's pinned. Let me flip this over. You can see I'm going to put my pocket top underneath, and it's folded and pinned. Put this pocket top underneath. Let me pick that up and repin. Okay, so now I'm at the back. Here's that line, my first line in the back right here. Fold on that line without stretching the fabric. And pin that. My second line. I mean, if you just laid your ruler down and just drew a line straight across, that's fine. Whatever is easier for you. Again, my fabric is slippery, so trying to do what works here. Okay, here's the last one. Okay, so I'm going to take this over to the iron and press. Okay, so we are still at step 14 with the casings, aka channels, if you like to refer to it as channels, to run things through. So we went ahead and we turned up the upper edge and folded it to the inside of the pants and pressed it. Now it says, stitch upper edge to pants along stitching lines, leaving an opening to insert the elastic. So here's that yoke piece for the back of the pants. And you see how there are 3 rows of dashed lines. Those are 3 stitching lines. That is so you can insert 3 rows of elastic. I don't want 3 rows of elastic. I just want 1. So at this point, you may, if you didn't already, mark your pants for the 3 stitching lines, the 3 stitching rows. Go ahead and mark them and go ahead and stitch across the front and the back all the way around for your 3 rows of elastic. I only want 1, so I'm going to do my stitching line towards the bottom to make space for just 1 wider piece of elastic. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Go ahead and face you down to the machine. See what I'm going here. I don't like all of that elastic. So again, I have to stick with my zigzag stitch here. And I'm actually going to stitch, starting, stitch on the inside of the pants so I can see the edge. Don't want to go off the edge. I'm going to make sure my pocket is still going towards the front because I want to catch it when I stitch. So I am going to, actually, I want to start from where my pocket is underneath the fold. I just want to start right there with my stitching. Like I said, I want to make sure I catch it and I'm going to put my presser foot so that the left side of my presser foot is running along the edge of the fabric. And I can feel that pocket in there so that I'll catch it in my stitching. All right, so I'm doing my zigzag stitch, and I'm going to go all the way around and make sure to leave an opening at the other side so I can insert the elastic through. So let's see. Gotta love knits. And also I am using only a 2.5 for my zigzag stitch, because I don't mind if they show up a little bit through my little checkered print, but I don't want these large zigzags showing. So I'm not pulling, I'm just holding it flat so it doesn't bunch up. Gently, gently tugging at the other end of the machine. Again, just so that it doesn't bunch up because I'm using such a short zigzag stitch. Right now I'm making my way across the back yoke. Still in the back here, approaching that side seam. And the pocket. So the pocket top is still underneath the fold. So I am going to continue going until I get closer to where I started, because I do want to leave an opening. So right now I'm passing the faux fly of the front of the pants, so definitely want to keep going past that. Okay, so I'm going to leave myself about 1.5 to 2 inch opening to get the elastic through, because I am going to need a wider elastic since I'm only doing one casing and not doing those additional stitching lines to add 3 rows of elastic. So let me just back stitch a couple of times and cut it. All right. So you can't exactly see my casing, but it's there. And let me get a ruler, show you guys how big my casing is. It looks like it's probably like 1.25 inches. So my casing is, yeah, about 1.25 inches. So I plan to insert a 1-inch wide elastic in mine. So let me go ahead and get that elastic ready, and let's see how much I'll need. So still on step number 14, it's saying to cut 2 pieces of elastic, each a comfortable waist measurement, plus 1 inch. Okay, so those 3 casings, oh, you know what? One of those casings is going to be for the ribbon or drawstring. So yeah, and I'm not doing that either. So basically I need to cut 1 piece of 1-inch elastic, excuse me, 1 piece of 1-inch elastic for what's comfortable for my waist, plus an extra inch because we need to overlap it when we stitch it closed on both ends. So let me go ahead and get my elastic ready, and I'll come back and show you how I thread it through the casing. All right, so I cut my elastic to like 32 3/4 inches long. And I am going to feed it through the casing with a safety pin. So I'm gonna go down about 1/4 inch and insert this safety pin, close it up, and then feed it through the casing. So let me show you how we do that. Make sure you have a good view here of what I'm doing. So I got my pants. Find that opening that I left. It's in the front somewhere. Maybe the other side. I knew I didn't stitch this shut all the way. This is the front. Here it is. Okay. Sorry, you cannot see. Excuse me. Okay, see that? There's my opening. So I'm going to try to lay my elastic flat. We don't want it twisting once we get going, so try to keep it flat. So just going to feed that safety pin through. Try not to squeeze the safety pin because you'll open it. And that's always fun, trying to close a safety pin while in a casing. So don't squeeze it. I'm just feeding it through, pulling my elastic through. So my elastic, I did not have 1 inch, I had 1 1/4 inch, which is fine because my casing is 1 1/4 inch. It's just going to be a little snug to pull through, but it's working. I just have to be careful not to open the safety pin. So you guys go ahead, pull yours through. I don't know if you have 2 casings because of doing 2 rows of elastic or 1 like me, but go ahead and then we will come back to see what's next. Okay, so I went ahead and tried on my pants after feeding the elastic through, and that's what the instructions tell us to do. Try them on after we get the elastic through to see if we have given ourselves enough elastic or too much. I discovered I gave myself too much. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce mine by about 1 inch. And then go ahead and overlap them and basically stitch the elastic shut. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Bring this in so you can see what I'm working with here. More light. So I'm going to go ahead and get my glasses on. Go ahead and unpin this. All right, be honest, did your safety pin open while you were feeding this through? Mine didn't this time. So I'm going to trim both of these a little bit because I had a lot of extra. So now I have both ends. I'm going to pull it through a little bit. the way I like to do mine is just overlap it like that. So I'm going to overlap it, put it in the machine. I'm still doing my zigzag stitch. Give this elastic opportunity to move around and stretch without popping stitches. Okay, make sure you can see that. I'm just going to try to sew like a box. To close it up, I'm just doing a box, so hopefully you can see this, what I'm doing here. It's not the prettiest box, but it's just to, oh, this is funny. I've had one issue after another. Let's see what's going on. My bobbin is not, I'm out. Okay, back to sewing our box. I have another bobbin in here. I was saying that it wasn't going to be a perfect box, but it will be one. This is, again, just to get the elastic closed up. A lot of finessing, pulling, tugging, stretching. We're in the home stretch. See what I did there? Home stretch. Okay, I'll show you what I did. Again, it's not pretty, but it's a box. So no one's gonna see this. Go ahead and just, I'm snipping these threads for myself. Okay, again, I already tried this on, so I knew I had too much elastic. For yourselves, you have to decide, are these going to be your going out to eat pants? Do you need extra elastic, or are you planning on just looking cute? All right, so now it's in there, okay? So probably tell what area needs to be stitched shut. It's doing a bit of a pucker right about here. So now I am going to put this back under the machine. I only have about, what, 2 inches of opening to close up. So the instructions say that once you put your elastic in there, go ahead and stretch, tug on that elastic a little bit while you sew this opening closed so that it's flat while you're sewing. So let's go ahead and close up our openings. Close up 2 if you're doing 2 casings of elastic, or if you did like me, you just have 1. See, for those of you who did too, you probably wish you did like me now. I'm just kidding. All right, so I'm going to close this up. Just trying to get myself in line with my previous stitching. Okay. Stretching it a little bit so that it's flat. Okay. And a little bit of back stitching. Okay. Cut my loose threads. Okay, now my pants are closed. This is the front, and you can see I have a wide casing. This is like 1¼ inch wide. So yeah, and these fit pretty good, and I'll have a little room to eat. Let's see what our next step is. All right. For those of you who are doing the drawstring or ribbon, you can go ahead and insert your ribbon in the same manner that you inserted the elastic. Safety pin, fish it through, cut it, tie your little knots off so it doesn't get pulled through your pants, and you'll be good to go. So now we're ready to move on to the leg bands. We are almost home here for this view. So let's grab those pieces and see what we need to do with those. All right, put the camera down on my pieces really quick so you can see what we're doing. Give me some space, some light. Sorry about that. All right, here are our leg bands, and our directions are saying stitch end of each leg band matching the notches. So there's one notch on this side, and then there's one notch on this side. See that? So we're going to fold it in half. I'm going to clip mine with my little clips here. You pin yours if you're using pins, or you don't. If you feel comfortable, you don't even have to do that. So, all right, so it says to go ahead and stitch these two closed. So that's what I'll do with my 5/8 inch seam allowance. That's one. And then here's my second one. And that's two. All right, snip this thread here. The next step, step number 18, it says, with wrong sides together, fold leg band along fold line. So I didn't mark the fold line. I believe it's just going to be in half equally, but I don't want to steer you wrong. So let's take a look at our paper pattern piece. Here it is. There is our leg band piece. And yeah, the fold line is basically in half. So we're going to fold this in half. Now, that seam that we just stitched, if you want, you can fold it to one side, or you can just open it up. Whatever makes you comfortable. I'm going to try to make mine open so that it's not bulky on one side. So I'm just going to hold that open at one end, hold it open at the other end, fold, hold, and flip that cuff like that. So now those seams are laying flat inside, I hope. They're moving around a little bit. Let's see. You can always press it to make it cooperate. I mean, honestly, if it's important to you. So, okay, that's one. I'm going to do the other one. Trying to hold this open. Hold that. Hold that. Flip the rest. Okay. So that seems to be staying. Okay. So wrong sides together. We've gone ahead and made that cuff. All right. Now it says press lightly. We can do that. That way, again, especially if you're using a woven, it'll be nice and crisp for you and won't move around a lot when you're trying to pin it. And I guess I'll go ahead and press mine because I want my seams to stay open inside of here. So let's press that and then we'll come back for the next step. Okay, so our next step, step number 19, it says to pin the band to the lower edge of pants, matching notches, squares to side seams, and seam to inner leg seam, based. Stitch stretching the band to fit. Stitch again, 3/8 inch away in the seam allowances. Trim close to the second stitching. Press seam allowances toward the pants. Okay, so that's a lot. So let's just back up. We want to go ahead and pin the cuffs to the lower edge of the pants. So let's start with that. And we're going to match our notches and our inner leg seams. All right. So to do that, I am going to put the pants inside the cuff with the raw edges at the top like this. So I got all my raw edges up here. So first, I think the easiest thing to match will be the seam. So our seam on the cuff, line it up with the inner leg seam of your pants. Here's the seam of your pants. I'm going to open that up. See? And then here is seams of my cuff. So I'm going to line all of that up, and then I'm going to put one of my little clips to hold that. Okay. Then any notches. Let's line up any notches. So I found a notch. Now, the pant leg is going to be bigger than the cuff, obviously. So it's going to feel like your pant leg is swimming around in the cuff. So that's why, thank goodness, we have notches. So here is the notch of my pant leg. Here are the notches of my cuff. So even though I have extra of pant leg, I'm just going to line up the notches. They're all together, 3 layers. Put a clip on that. Now, I have to get a better marking pen or something because I was using my chalk and it seems like all my little markings have come off and I had to keep going back to remark them, but that's all right. Let's see. Let's see. So now I am lining up. I do see a mark on my cuff. I have a dot, or maybe that's the square opposite the seam. So let's put that square on the seam opposite, because we've already lined up one set of seams. Let's put this dot on the other set of seams, and then we lined up a set of notches. I feel like I have so much extra in here. Let's take a look at the pattern piece, the paper pattern piece, to see what else we should have as an indication of how to spread out this excess fabric in the pant leg, because I don't know about you, but I still have a lot of pant leg. So let's look at the pattern piece to see what other marking we should have. You might have yours, but mine have either ironed away or something. So let's see. Okay, so here is the cuff. This is the cuff piece. So we know we had the 2 notches on the sides, one here and one there, because we matched them up when we stitched together, and we also matched this notch up with a notch on the pant leg. Also, we had these 2 squares, 1, 2, which really ends up becoming 1 square because we fold this in half. So I can see that marking on the cuff. But as far as the pant leg pattern piece, I'm not seeing any markings on the back. And I feel like this is the one that has all of the excess. And there aren't any, see, this is the cutting line that we cut for this view A. That was the back of the pants, and then this is the front of the pants, and that's the one that had the notch. We already matched a notch. So folks, it looks like we just have to try to evenly distribute this excess of fabric here. So let's see. Here is your test in patience today, because it's a lot of fabric in there. You know what might help? Kind of stretch. If you're working with a knit right now, I would say go ahead and just sort of stretch a little bit to see how that fabric is going to flatten out. They did us a little dirty on this one. So I'm cuffing it out too to help. Trying to just space it out a little, somewhat evenly. Guess what, guys? Good thing is this is down at the ankles. So, you know, if you have a little extra. Now, if you're using a woven, you are probably going to need to do a couple of basting stitches, 2 rows of basting stitches before you get to this part. You're going to have to go back, unpin what you've pinned, do some basting stitches in between the leg seam and the other leg seam, because you'll probably need to gather to get this to fit. Yeah. A little nerve-wracking, but we'll make it work. I will put a pleat in here. I'm just going to sort of divvy this up as evenly as I can. It's not earth-shattering. All right, so get it to where you feel like you can live with it. And we'll see how it turns out once we run it through the machine. Go ahead and please do the same thing to the other leg. See? Yeah, we have 2 side seams and 1 notch. I think another notch would have been a little more helpful for us, but we're going to make do. So I'm going to go ahead and insert the pant leg into the cuff like we did before, and then I'm going to find the seams of the cuff, the 2 layers of fabric, because it's folded in half, and then one of the seams of the pant, open that seam, match them up together, put a clip on it. Now I want to find that notch. Here's the notch, the two notches on the cuff, the two layers rather. Now let's find the notch on the pant leg. Here it is, right there. So I am going to go ahead and put a clip on that. And then I do have a marking for my squares on the cuff. Got to find that. And it should be opposite the leg seam. Yep, here it is. And then put that on the other leg seam. So here's the leg seam right here. I'm going to put that up against my square. Ooh, fiddly, very fiddly. Okay, put a clip on that. Then here comes the fun part. We're going to do our little dance here. Let me flip it out, kind of play with it like this again. However best I can. Yeah. And nerve-wracking. All right, well, you know what? I spread it out. And clipped it. Okay. Let's have fun. Let's go ahead and stitch this. So it's saying to now baste it. So you don't have to machine baste. You can hand baste. Get your sewing needle and some thread and just put some nice big long stitches in there. And it's just to hold this in place for you while you're feeding it through the machine. So you can do that basting stitch via the machine, or you can do it by hand. I'm going to go ahead and do my basting stitches with the machine. And to make it easier, I am going to start off at the leg seam that I matched up to the dot, not the leg seam that I matched up to the leg seam of the cuff. I'm going to start at the leg seam that I matched up with the dot on the cuff. And the reason why I'm doing that is because we have to do this one first, right? We are going to stretch the fabric just a little bit if you're working with a knit until we get to the notch. So here's my dot and leg seam. Then here's my notches. And then here's my leg seam to leg seam, right? Here is where I'm going to have to do a lot of pulling to make sure the cuff and the fabric of the leg gets smooth enough for me to stitch. So I'd rather get all of the shorter runs done first and save the longest run for last, where I have to do a lot of tugging and stretching to make it work out. So, all right, let's start. We're going to do a basting stitch too, by the way. So let's increase our length here. Mine goes up to 5, not 6. So I'm going to do a straight stitch for this since it's just a basting stitch. And hopefully by putting the basting stitch in first, it is going to help us when we're ready to do our final stitch. And basting stitch, let's see. Basting stitch is not normally at your seam allowance that you're sewing. We're sewing a 5/8 inch seam allowance. This basting stitch, just do this with, run your presser foot right along the edge of your fabric, because you want to be within your seam allowance to do this. Okay. Let's get started. Let the games begin. Minimal tugging at this point. We're just trying to get from one point to the next, and if there's any unevenness with the length of the cuff versus the length of the pant leg in between the 2 points that we're starting with, you just tug a little bit to make it stretch so that you're smoothing out your space to sew on. So I've already did the seam to seam. Now I'm approaching the notch, passing that. Now, so I'm going to have to stretch a little bit because from the notch to the dot and seam, we have a little extra pant leg versus cuff. So now I'm going to pull, don't pull on the pant leg, by the way, it's already long enough. Just pull on the cuff to make the cuff stretch out to meet the length of the pant leg, okay? I'm opening up my seam allowance. I like to sew mine open. And I'm still pulling on my cuff because I have lots of pant leg here. I feel like there's a whole lot more pulling I need to do to make this work. This is very strange. All right, now, lots of pulling, guys, because this is the stretch now. The home stretch. Don't pull the pant, just the cuff. I remember doing this before and I've had to pull it from both ends because I'm pulling and I'm pulling it back through the machine. So might have to hold the part that's behind the needle so you don't pull it back towards you, because when you're working with some stretchy fabric, it resists. Okay, not too bad, but all right, let's see how I did. Okay, it's there, and it has some rouging. We'll call it rouging. Yeah. Looks good. So that was the basting stitch. Then, after that basting stitch, the instruction says, stitch again 3/8 inch away in the seam allowances. Trim close to the second stitching. Okay, so we're going to stitch for real. Go back to your regular stitch length. For me, I'm going to do my zigzag stitch because I want this to be able to stretch when I put my foot into the pant. So stitch again 3/8 inch away in the seam allowances. Trim close to the second stitching. Press seam allowances toward the pants. Okay, let's do that. And then go ahead and do the second leg as well, and then we'll meet back up. Okay, all right, so both of the cuffs are on. I hope you didn't skip the basting because that actually made it so much easier to go back and do the permanent stitch. because all of the hard work was done during the basting phase of all the stretching, trying to get the pant leg to fit the cuff. Again, if you were using a woven fabric, then you would have had to do some basting stitches to gather. You pull those basting stitches to gather that fabric, kind of like rouging it to make it smaller so that I can fit inside the cuffs. So I have both of my cuffs on, and so our next step was to go ahead and trim close to the second stitching. So we have a lot of seam allowance left over here. And so basically you just want to go in, don't cut your stitching, but just go ahead and trim it. Don't need all this bulk. It's always fun to trim in a circle. Might be easier to just lay this down on your cutting mat and use a rotary cutter, maybe. I'm just trying to do it somewhat even. No one's going to see this part because this is going to be inside the pants at your ankles, but you'll be able to feel it. So if you don't like all that bulk around your ankle, go ahead and trim it down. Okay, so that's good for that one. Sweep that up later. I'll go ahead and trim this one. It's pretty thick. Lots of layers. Clean this up a little bit. Keeps wanting to fold in while I'm trying to cut it. Okay. Almost there. Now, for me, I have a serger, so I can put this in my serger to bind all of this, bind all of these raw edges, but I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, so let's shake all these loose pieces. So we've trimmed both cuffs along all of the seam lines there. Okay, so after we trim, it says press seam allowance toward the pants. So in this particular case, you want to go over to your iron. Here's our seam allowance right here. You want to push it down toward the pants. Like that. And press it. Okay? Because you won't notice it as much when you're wearing the pants. If you press this up the other direction, it's going to feel very thick around your ankle. So we're going to press it down toward the pants. Because you already have the cuff, the thickness of the cuff. You don't want even more bulk. Okay, so we're going to press that. And then the next step, it says on the outside, top stitch the lower edge of the pants. So basically, turn this inside out a little bit for you. So what I've done is I've sort of turned the pant leg inside out so you can see what I'm talking about. So here's the cuff right here. They're saying to top stitch right there. And that seam that you pressed up towards the pant leg, you're going to catch it when you do your top stitching to keep it from moving around on you. It'll stay stitched up right there. in the more balloon part of the pant, which is why you won't really feel it, because this is where the pant starts to get a little bigger and looser versus extra bulk right here around your ankle. So you just top stitch that close to, not stitch in a ditch, don't stitch in that ditch there, that seam, but right above it. And you do that for both of the pant legs and you'll be done. Now, I am not going to top stitch mine because mine is a zigzag stitch and I don't really want the zigzag stitch, top stitch look. Not that anyone will be able to see this at the bottom of my pants, but I'm going to go ahead and press, like they said, I'm going to press this towards the pant leg and then I'll be done. But then you can go ahead and top stitch yours down if you'd like. So let's go over a little bit of cleanup here. Let me take you guys off of here. Okay. Yeah. Let's go over a little things that we can clean up about our pants if you don't have a serger. So basically, if you want to clean up the insides a little bit, you can trim all of your seams down a little bit, maybe down to 1/4 inch, like so that it's this thick. Instead of this thick, you can make it thinner, right? Or not. You can press your seams open if you want. Okay, you can zigzag all your edges if you're concerned that you might have some fraying and unraveling depending on what type of, fabric you used. Here are the pockets. You can trim down the seam allowance on the pockets to get rid of some bulk because that's a lot of seam allowance left that we don't need. Our faux fly, if you want to trim down a little bit off of our faux fly, you can do that. Just look to where if you don't want extra bulk, here's the crotch seams. You can take that down a little bit. Try them on, see if they feel comfortable. If that's too much going on for you, go ahead and trim it down a little bit. All right, so I'll come back to you with my thoughts on this pattern. So what did you think? Was this an easy sew? Was it difficult or challenging for you? Did you like it? Not like it? Did your pants turn out okay? Can you wear them? If you can wear them, then you did good. And if you can't wear them, hit me up with any questions to see what we can do to make any changes and adjustments so that you can wear them. So here's my opinion on the pattern. I like the pattern. It was pretty straightforward. Some of the instructions I had to read over a few times because it was a little confusing sometimes, but it wasn't, I couldn't call it difficult. I would have appreciated an extra marking or notch when we were putting the cuff on the pant leg bottoms so that we wouldn't have to guesstimate as to how much stretching and smoothing out we would need to do. However, putting the basting stitch in first when putting those cuffs on was a great help. So I hope you didn't skip that step. But my pants, they turned out pretty good. I do see the look that the pants have due to all of that excess pant fabric in the back. It's given a lot of ruching in the back at the ankle, almost looking like some pleats. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So here are my finished pants, my finished joggers. I'll just sew. Okay, I'm gonna sit these guys right here. So here is the front of the ankle, right? Here's the front cuff. Okay, it's flat and it's smooth, but look at the back. I like the way it turned out. You see that? We have that ruching right there. I like that gathering that we have right there at the back. So I actually like that feature. Here's the other side, the other leg. So it's smooth in the front and then has the gathering right there. So Yeah, I like that look. And then what do you think about the faux fly front? Did yours turn out okay? That's just my peach chalk. That'll come off when I wash my pants, but I don't know if you can really see mine with this print that I have, but you know, it came out okay. And I tried these on. They're pretty comfortable. I like them. So what I'm gonna do is I'll make sure to include some footage and or photos of me wearing these pants so that we can see if I got the fit right. Thank you so much for joining me for this so long. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you learned some new things, felt a little bit challenged. I hope that your garment turned out to meet your expectations and a wearable garment for you. And again, if there's any changes that need to be made, if there's anything I can do to assist with that, please let me know. If you have any comments about this pattern, please feel free to put them in the comments section. If there's anything that you like or don't like about this pattern, go ahead and make those notations. Look at it this way. Help those who are coming after you. If there is something that you feel people need to look out for, if you're a beginning sewist or intermediate or advanced, if there's some tips that you'd like to offer, go ahead and include those in the description box for those who are going to come and watch this video after you and who might also do this sew along. And then they'll appreciate all of the comments and the feedback and the tips and the help. So again, thank you so much for participating. It's been fun, and we'll see what I have in store for you guys next. Stay tuned for some photos and or video of me wearing these pants. Bye-bye.